It's your game mommy. It's dying of exposure. We're going to call this free period. It's different again. Sorry I've been away. We're talking about Dimension 20 Fantasy High Junior Year. Last week's episode, The Last Stand. If you haven't watched it, what are you doing watching this? You should go watch it because there's going to be spoilers. But I have thoughts. There's not going to be a fan artist segment to this because I'm going to be gently, a little bit critical of the setup of this combat. To be clear, I love this episode. I love this combat, but I have notes and I'm going to be a setup and I don't want to bring them in on this if they disagree with me. So we'll get back to that. Also, you'll notice there's no like overlay or anything. We're ditching all of that. We're talking about a specific feature of The Last Stand from Fantasy High Junior Year. If you agree with me, if you disagree with me, feel free to comment. I love the feedback. If you like things like this or like my Worlds Beyond Number video that I uploaded yesterday, feel free to follow the channel, subscribe, follow, notifications, all that. But let's jump into my thoughts on The Last Stand from the most recent episode of Fantasy High Junior Year. I cannot tell you, I'm in prayer hands for a reason. I cannot tell you how uncomfortable I am to, on my own, in a video, criticize anything about Dimension 20. Number one, because I love it. It's my favorite baby. It's my favorite actual play to watch, just like Worlds Beyond Number is my favorite actual play to listen to. Dimension 20 is what got me into the genre of actual play, and I'm forever thankful of it. And I love Fantasy High, both as a setting and this junior year. I love the characters. Brennan Lee Mulligan is my favorite GM. Now that I've done all those disclaimers, there was something deeply absent from The Last Stand combat. Now I'm going to start off with what's good. Of course the questions were good. Of course the scenario was good. Of course being able to just fight your way to succeeding at junior year is both consistent with the tone of Fantasy High Junior Year and Arthur Eggfort. I liked the ability to just fight a bunch of monsters. Emily Axford brought it up in the adventuring party afterward, in the after talk. Sometimes it's just good to fight some beasties, and because of the nature of the Fantasy High setting and everything, it's usually going to be humanoids, it's usually going to be fully thinking creatures and things like that. It's not going to be like just like a purple worm or like sturges or like a manticore, and having that opportunity is great. I think the monsters coming out in phases is great. I love the idea that there was a proctor that they had to protect. I think all of this works. All of it works. The challenge is that in the universe, it was set up that this is supposed to be a combat that the players could potentially die from, right? Not the players, sorry. The characters could, so the bad kids, the photosynthetic kids, could potentially die from this. Now, of course, Arthur Eggfort has like a little thing where he's like, no, my entire vibe is keep doing wild violence until the thing you want succeeds, right? Which is, of course, a continued prestige on the happenstance of D&D adventuring parties to be all murder, no conversation, no consequence, right? And so it works, and I think overall the episode worked. But at no point did I think that any of the characters were in any real mortal threat. Now, part of this is because of their excellent strategy, and we want to reward them from that, but you've got to expect that this group is going to have excellent strategy, especially if you've seen Starstruck Odyssey. So, as a GM, how do you make a mid to high level combat with 6 players, right? With 6 players, so 12 rough actions per turn, with whether they be double attack actions or good bonus actions and main actions, or like a haste potion or what have you. How do you make that physically threatening to the characters, like they're going to lose, right? Because you want them to feel like they're going to lose, right? Well, so in 5th edition, of course, one of the things is that you shouldn't be long resting after every combat. Whether or not you do this as a GM or I do this as a GM kind of depends on the game. But the combats are built to be over a long period of time to drain resources. This is why there's only a few classes that get a lot of stuff back on short rests. You can't do something like multiple combats between long rests and an actual play because you don't have the episodes. In a Dimension 20 style one, they don't have the episodes. So the combats have to be big set pieces. It's built around that. So now you need to start making challenges for these mid to high level creatures that are draining their resources or their hit points through it. Now, Dimension 20 has done this in the past. In the sewer fight in Unsleeping City Season 1, they had the water levels raising, which is zones your characters, right? Theoretically, in Crown of Candy, they had a fight where the enemy was very distant from them, so they had to close, right? These are the sorts of things. And that field was fairly large and had the center obstacle. And again, they got to watch out for the Proctor, because the Proctor doesn't have their AC or their hit point wells or anything like that. So that was good. I think the major challenge for this is the hit point wells. It didn't feel like it was mortally endangering the characters, nor did it feel like that they were going to lose. Now, again, they were given a surprise round so that they could kick off when things came through. They were also given their first round and their initiatives. Again, when you have 6 players with different initiatives, you're going to have a lot of actions that can foil monsters. So that's where things like environmental actions, legendary actions, lair actions that are draining the hit points. A great example would be environmental things that shift every round, which makes sense because this is an extra demi-plane. And so one of them is lightning storms, and they've got a deck save or they take a certain amount of damage. And then one of them is like the whole environment becomes hazy and thick, and then they're all slowed if they don't save, right? And their visibility is limited. These are the kinds of things that can really affect the action economy and strategies of a party and make them constantly have to pivot. One of the things that I feel like could have been built on what was already there was during the question portion, and pulling questions out the desk. Your movement is of course free, but to pull a question and answer it, if that had occupied the entire action and bonus action of a character, it would have been a decision on who's pulling questions each round. And you could even have limited it further by being like, you're the only one that can pull questions from your own desk. So that means that they have 12 questions that they have to pull, which if 2 of the 6 party members pull questions and burn their whole action and bonus action on that, it means that now there's only 4 people to deal with the oncoming monsters. And that still would have to go 6 rounds because they can only pull 1 question at a time, right? So now you've got a big battle that you know is going to go bare minimum 6 rounds, maybe with a haste potion and some other, or haste spell and some other stuff. You might be able to whittle that down to 5 or 4 rounds so that players can do more. But man, would that have been challenging for them, plus the monsters and everything. You're trying to balance the encounter because, of course, especially in an actual play like Dimension 20, and specifically with Fantasy High, we're here to watch the heroes win. But what we want them to do is believe that they can't win, or that they're not going to win, or that they might lose. And at the very beginning of the Last Stand battle in the previous episode, they were worried about it. But as the battle kind of kept going and they kept winning, they kept succeeding, it lost that tension, right? And I think that there could have been more to be done with that. The last recommendation, and I don't generally recommend this, is that taking advantage of knowing what your players' characters can do and creating things that occasionally foil that through a combat, not that are entirely built to shut all of an action structure down from a given character, but that know that there's a person that can do like mass heal and therefore can counter it, right? Or that know that there's a barbarian that can go into a rage and therefore can maybe cast a super high level calm emotions, right? To take them out of that rage and play with that. Maybe just once a combat for each of those little gimmicks. Those can be infuriating, but not unpleasant if not overused, because again, it creates that tension of, oh no, how do we get around this now? How do we pivot our strategies? There's plenty of us, we can do this, but we have to keep moving, we have to keep changing. Now, did the Photosynth kids do a great job? Did the players, did the Intrepid heroes do an excellent job at countering Brennan's maneuvers and setups and increasing their optimized battle fronts? Yeah, of course they did. They did an amazing job at that. And there's something to be said about us all enjoying watching Brennan get dunked on by the Intrepid heroes. But especially if you're a GM out there and you've got a 6-player table of level 10s, or a 5-player table of level 12s, or a 4-player table of level 14s, and you're struggling to do that, you have to create things that they can't stop that are wearing them down, whether it be by hit points, whether it be by action economy, whether it be by spell slots. There has to be those things, especially if you're the type to essentially do 1 or 2 battles between long rests. That's what needs to happen to have that mortality or that failure threat come into play. You don't want to make it unfair, but you do want to make them question if they're going to make it through the battle. That's my criticism. The rest of the episode was, of course, fantastic. The closure of the episode was fantastic. I think Brennan did an amazing job. I think the Intrepid Heroes did an amazing job. And I love Dimension 20. But that's the criticism I have. Hopefully next week I get to go back to just being like, this is great. So if you like this video, if you like other videos I might talk about actual plays, like the one I uploaded yesterday about Worlds Beyond Number and everything, if you're keeping current with these things like I am, feel free to subscribe, like, comment. If you think that I'm a complete fool, that I don't know what I'm talking about, feel free to insult me in the comments. Thank you for watching this video from Dying of Exposure, and we'll see you next week.